That's supposed to be a soldier? A dirty girl with handcuffs and her head hanging down in shame. The commanding officer's voice rang out with complete contempt as the new recruits marched past the chained woman. Every stare, every whispered comment, everyone believed she had betrayed her unit. But when the four-star general stopped walking and raised his hand to salute her with full military honors, the entire training camp went dead silent. Who gets saluted by a general while wearing chains? Comment, respect, if you believe true honor doesn't wear medals. It carries scars. Sophia Laurent, 32 years old, Navy SEAL sniper, participated in over 47 special operations missions without a single failure on her record. She was the ghost of Bravo Echo Unit, feared by enemies and respected by allies for her supernatural accuracy and ice-cold composure under extreme pressure. Her kill count remained classified, but whispered stories suggested numbers that made veteran snipers shake their heads in disbelief. But now, she faced internal detention following an incident that remained classified from public knowledge. Rumors spread like wildfire through the military base. She had refused to take a shot, resulting in casualties among her own teammates. The story grew more twisted with each telling, painting her as a coward who froze when her unit needed her most. Since that day, Sophia became a living cautionary tale for new recruits, a lesson about how emotions could destroy missions and cost lives. She was the example commanders pointed to when teaching young soldiers about the absolute necessity of following orders without question or hesitation. During the monthly honor parade, she was forced to walk in front of the formation handcuffed, head down, stripped of all rank insignia and military decorations. The humiliation was deliberate and systematic, designed to break her spirit and reinforce the consequences of battlefield hesitation. The crowd of new recruits assumed they were witnessing a shameful punishment for the crime of betrayal. They saw a broken soldier who had failed her brothers in arms when they needed her most. The whispers and pointing fingers followed her everywhere she went. Don't be a Sophia became the unofficial motto among trainees. But behind the layer of imposed silence lay a truth that no one dared to mention publicly, a truth so classified that even discussing it could result in court-martial and imprisonment. Sophia had been offered multiple opportunities to defend herself, to explain her actions, to provide context that might restore her reputation. She refused every single chance, choosing instead to accept blame and shame without offering any justification or excuse. Her silence protected something more important than her own career or reputation. Her silence protected lives that would be endangered if the real story ever became public knowledge. The military leadership found themselves in an impossible position. They couldn't reveal the truth without compromising ongoing operations and intelligence sources. They couldn't punish her officially without a proper trial that would expose classified information. So, they chose a middle path, public humiliation without formal charges. Sophia understood the game being played. She accepted her role as the scapegoat, knowing that her sacrifice served a greater purpose. She endured the mockery, the isolation, and the constant reminder of her supposed failure. Every morning, she woke up in a small detention cell. Every evening, she cleaned her equipment in solitude. Every meal was eaten alone, while other soldiers whispered about the sniper who had lost her nerve at the worst possible moment. Her former teammates were forbidden from contacting her. Her commanding officers treated her as if she no longer existed. The woman who had once been considered the most elite sniper in the Navy SEALs now lived as a ghost within her own organization. But General Victor Hale knew the truth. He had been quietly investigating the incident for months, piecing together classified intelligence reports and sealed testimonies. What he discovered changed everything he thought he knew about courage, sacrifice, and the true meaning of honor. The monthly parade was about to become the stage for a revelation that would shock the entire military establishment. Inside the training camp, every new recruit received the same warning: don't be a Sophia. A group of young soldiers whispered among themselves that they would teach her a lesson because she deserved to feel ashamed. They believed that weak female soldiers were useless in real combat situations. They threw sandbags near her detention area to mock her, trying to prove that emotional women have no place in elite units. Their harassment was constant and cruel, designed to break down whatever remained of her spirit and confidence. Sophia never reacted to any of it. She didn't speak a single word in response to their taunts and accusations. On the day of the honor parade, Sophia was dragged out to stand in the center of the courtyard, her feet still wearing light shackles for the stated reason of setting an example. She walked past hundreds of contemptuous stares from recruits who had been told she represented everything wrong with modern military standards. Each step felt like walking through a gauntlet of judgment and condemnation. One cocky young soldier laughed and sneered openly. Maybe she'll shoot herself if they remove those handcuffs. Another recruit shook his head in disgust. I can't believe they let women into SEAL units. Look what happens when emotions get involved in life or death decisions. The harassment had become so normalized that commanding officers barely bothered to stop it anymore. They saw it as a useful tool for maintaining discipline, reinforcing the importance of absolute obedience to orders. Sophia's daily routine had become a carefully orchestrated humiliation. Wake up at dawn in her small cell, eat breakfast alone while others whispered about her cowardice, clean equipment that she wasn't allowed to use, then return to isolation. The psychological warfare was sophisticated and relentless. Every interaction was designed to remind her that she had failed when it mattered most. Every conversation around her included references to her supposed weakness and inability to perform under pressure. But the truth was far more complex than anyone imagined. During the classified mission that had destroyed her reputation, Sophia had been given a direct order to eliminate a high-value target. The shot was clean, the target was in perfect position, and the mission's success seemed guaranteed. But at the last second, she had spotted something that changed everything. Children's toys scattered near the target building. Her enhanced scope revealed movement that suggested civilian families were present in the immediate area. The intelligence briefing had specifically stated that the target location was clear of non-combatants. The mission parameters had emphasized that collateral damage was unacceptable due to political sensitivities in the region. Sophia faced an impossible choice: follow orders and risk killing innocent children, or refuse the shot and accept the consequences of disobedience. She chose to protect the innocent, even knowing it would destroy her career and reputation. The mission had failed spectacularly. The high-value target escaped, and subsequent intelligence suggested that the missed opportunity had cost American lives in follow-up operations. But what the official reports didn't mention was that Sophia's refusal had also saved 9 children from certain death. The tension spiked when Sophia had just reached the center of the parade ground. The sound of helicopter rotors filled the air with deafening noise. A Black Hawk helicopter touched down in the middle of the ceremony, creating a whirlwind of dust and confusion. The unexpected arrival disrupted the entire parade formation. The aircraft door opened, and General Victor Hale stepped out. He was a 4-star general with decades of combat experience and a reputation for absolute integrity. His presence commanded immediate respect from every person present. But instead of walking toward the commanding officers or the VIP reviewing stand, General Victor Hale looked directly at Sophia. He ignored everyone else in the courtyard, focusing entirely on the woman in chains. Then, in front of hundreds of witnesses, he adjusted his military cap, straightened his uniform, and raised his hand in a perfect military salute directed specifically at Sophia. The gesture was unmistakable and unprecedented. A 4-star general was rendering honors to a supposedly disgraced soldier who stood in chains before her peers. The entire training camp fell into complete and stunned silence. Recruits stopped their mocking laughter. Commanding officers stood frozen in confusion and disbelief. Even the helicopter crew watched in amazement. The salute lasted for a full 10 seconds. General Victor Hale maintained perfect military bearing, his expression serious and respectful. This was not a mistake or a symbolic gesture. This was a deliberate act of recognition and honor. When he finally lowered his hand, the silence continued. No one moved, no one spoke. The implications of what they had just witnessed were too profound to process immediately. Why would one of the most senior generals in the United States military salute a soldier who was supposedly guilty of cowardice and betrayal? What did General Victor Hale know that the rest of them didn't? The questions hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Everything they thought they knew about Sophia Laurent and her supposed failure was about to be challenged in the most dramatic way possible. Type honor if you believe true leaders recognize silent sacrifices. General Victor Hale immediately ordered the cancellation of all detention orders for Sophia right there in the courtyard, in front of hundreds of witnesses who had been mocking her just moments before. The fault was never hers, he announced in a voice that carried across the entire parade ground. The fault belongs to us. The people who gave blind orders without understanding the complete tactical situation. The truth began to unfold in devastating detail. During that classified mission, Sophia had refused the kill shot because she had detected children within the blast radius of the target building. But her radio communications reporting the civilian presence had been jammed by enemy interference. She had been labeled as disobedient and cowardly, but General Victor Hale had secretly investigated the incident using classified intelligence sources and satellite surveillance footage that wasn't available during the original inquiry. She saved 9 children, General Victor Hale declared, his voice filled with both anger and admiration. She carried the blame alone, no defense, no explanations, no attempts to justify her actions or restore her reputation. Body camera footage from the mission was declassified and displayed publicly within the military installation. The video showed Sophia calmly cleaning her rifle and sitting quietly, waiting to be arrested after the mission, without offering a single word of self-defense or explanation. She had known that revealing the presence of children would compromise ongoing intelligence operations in the region. She had understood that defending herself would put other missions and other soldiers at risk. So she chose silence and sacrifice. One of the young recruits who had been mocking her earlier collapsed to his knees, overcome with shame and realization. "We were making fun of a hero," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. The revelation sent shockwaves through the entire military community. For months, they had been using Sophia as an example of failure and weakness. In reality, she represented the highest ideals of moral courage and selfless service. The intelligence reports revealed that the target building had been a carefully constructed trap. Enemy forces had deliberately placed civilian families in the area, knowing that American rules of engagement would prevent an attack if non-combatants were present. Sophia's refusal to fire had not only saved innocent lives, but also prevented a massive international incident that would have damaged American relations throughout the region. Her decision had been tactically sound and morally justified. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. General Victor Hale pulled out a classified dossier that contained detailed information about subsequent operations in the same area. "Because of Sophia's intelligence about civilian presence, we were able to adjust our approach," he explained. Her information led to the successful capture of the high-value target 3 weeks later, along with his entire network. The mission that everyone thought had failed had actually provided crucial intelligence that led to a much larger victory. Sophia's apparent disobedience had been the key to a strategic success that saved hundreds of lives and disrupted a major terrorist organization. The commanding officers who had participated in her humiliation now stood in stunned silence, realizing the magnitude of their mistake. They had punished a hero while praising mediocrity. They had destroyed the reputation of someone who embodied everything they claimed to value. General Victor Hale continued his revelation with devastating precision. "The enemy had been monitoring our communications, waiting for us to eliminate civilians so they could use the footage for propaganda purposes. Sophia's refusal denied them that victory." The psychological torture that Sophia had endured for months was revealed to be completely unjustified. Every mocking comment, every degrading order, every moment of public humiliation had been inflicted on someone who had made the most difficult and correct decision of her military career. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the entire situation was Sophia's response to the revelation. Even as her name was being cleared and her reputation restored, she remained calm and unchanged. She had never asked for vindication. She had never demanded justice or recognition. She had simply endured the consequences of doing what she believed was right, regardless of the personal cost. The recruits who had been tormenting her now understood that they had been witnessing something extraordinary. A person who valued integrity more than reputation, who chose moral courage over personal comfort, who accepted sacrifice without complaint. General Victor Hale revealed one final piece of information that left everyone speechless. The children she saved included the son of a local tribal leader who became our most valuable intelligence asset in the region. Her decision to protect innocent life created an alliance that has saved dozens of American soldiers. The strategic implications were staggering. Sophia's moment of moral clarity had not only prevented a tactical disaster, but had also created opportunities for intelligence gathering that continued to benefit American operations throughout the region. The crowd of soldiers who had been laughing and pointing at her just hours earlier now stood in respectful silence, beginning to understand the difference between following orders and displaying true leadership under impossible circumstances. But Sophia herself seemed almost unaffected by the dramatic reversal of her situation. She had known the truth all along. She had lived with the knowledge that her sacrifice had served a greater purpose, even when no one else understood or appreciated her choice. The transformation in how people viewed her was immediate and complete. Where they had once seen weakness, they now recognized strength. Where they had perceived failure, they now understood success. Where they had assumed cowardice, they now witnessed courage. General Victor Hale made one final announcement that would change military training protocols forever. From this day forward, Mission Z-13 will be taught in every leadership course as an example of moral courage under extreme pressure. But even as her vindication became complete in public, Sophia remained the same person she had always been: quiet, professional, and committed to doing what was right, regardless of the consequences or recognition she might receive. The woman who had been chained and humiliated just hours earlier was now revealed to be one of the most decorated and respected soldiers in the entire United States military. But more importantly, she was someone who had proven that true honor comes from within, not from external validation or approval. Sophia was immediately freed from her chains and shackles, but even with her vindication complete and her reputation restored, she remained characteristically silent and composed. She walked quietly back to the small corner of the barracks that had become familiar during her months of isolation and humiliation. Without ceremony or celebration, she resumed her routine of cleaning her equipment as if nothing extraordinary had just occurred. General Victor Hale approached her personally, carrying a small wooden box that contained one of the military's highest honors, the Silver Star Medal for exceptional gallantry in action against enemy forces. "It's time you wore this," he said solemnly, offering her the decoration that she had earned months earlier but never received due to the classified nature of her heroic actions. But Sophia gently closed the box and pushed it back toward General Victor Hale with a quiet but firm gesture of refusal. "I don't need a medal to do what's right," she said simply, her voice calm and without any trace of bitterness or resentment despite everything she had endured. Her response perfectly captured the essence of who she was as a person and as a soldier. She had never acted heroically for recognition or rewards. She had simply made the moral choice in an impossible situation, accepting whatever consequences might follow. From that day forward, every class of new military recruits was required to study Mission Z-13 as part of their ethics and leadership training. But the instructors were specifically ordered never to reveal the name of the soldier who had demonstrated such extraordinary moral courage. The mission became a case study in making difficult decisions under extreme pressure, in choosing integrity over convenience, and in accepting personal sacrifice for the greater good of innocent people and strategic objectives. Sophia preferred this anonymity. She had no desire to become a public symbol or inspirational figure. She was content to know that her decision had saved lives and that future soldiers might learn from her example without knowing her identity. The recruits who had previously mocked and harassed her now requested transfers to other units, unable to face the shame of their behavior towards someone who had demonstrated such exceptional character and courage. The commanding officers who had participated in her humiliation quietly submitted requests for different assignments, recognizing that their credibility and leadership had been permanently damaged by their treatment of an innocent hero. But perhaps most remarkably, several of the soldiers who had witnessed her vindication reported that the experience had fundamentally changed their understanding of what it meant to serve with honor and integrity. They had learned that real strength often appears as weakness to people who don't understand the situation. They had discovered that true courage sometimes requires accepting blame and punishment for doing the right thing. They had witnessed firsthand how moral leadership can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances. Sophia continued her military service without fanfare or special recognition. She returned to active duty with her record completely cleared and her reputation restored, but she remained the same quiet professional she had always been. Years later, when military historians compiled lists of the most significant acts of courage in modern warfare, Mission Z-13 was always included near the top. But the identity of the soldier who had sacrificed her career to save innocent lives remained classified, known only to a few senior officials. General Victor Hale kept the Silver Star Medal in his personal office as a reminder that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who refuse to be called heroes. I never hesitate to pull the trigger when my heart and my orders point in the same direction, Sophia had said. A SEAL doesn't hesitate when conscience and duty are aligned. But when they conflict, when the mission demands something that violates the deepest principles of who I am as a human being, then I must choose which kind of soldier I want to be. I do not regret my decision. I was cursed, humiliated, and forgotten by people who didn't understand the complete situation, but I knew I had preserved something more important than my career or reputation: the lives of innocent children who had no choice in the conflict surrounding them. The weight of that choice stayed with her every day, since not as a burden, but as a reminder of what she was really fighting to protect. "We don't serve our country by blindly following orders," she continued. "We serve by upholding the values that make our country worth defending." Those 9 children are alive today. They're growing up, going to school, playing with friends, dreaming about their futures. They don't know my name, and they never will. But they exist because one person chose to do what was right instead of what was easy. That knowledge sustains me through every difficult moment, every challenge, every sacrifice that military service demands. When I clean my rifle, when I practice my marksmanship, when I prepare for the next mission, I remember why I became a soldier in the first place. It wasn't for medals or recognition or the respect of my peers. It was to protect people who can't protect themselves, to ensure that good people can live in safety, to create a world where children can grow up without fear. Sometimes that protection requires pulling the trigger. Sometimes it requires not pulling the trigger. The weapon is just a tool. The real strength comes from knowing when and how to use it, and when to choose a different path entirely. I learned that true courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and making the right choice anyway. It's about accepting consequences for decisions that others might not understand or appreciate. The military taught me to follow orders, but life taught me to follow my conscience. When those two things conflict, I choose conscience every time, regardless of the personal cost. People ask me if I would make the same decision again, knowing what I know now about the humiliation and punishment that followed. The answer is simple: absolutely. Because some things are more important than careers, more valuable than reputations, more precious than the approval of other people. The lives of innocent children fall into that category without question or hesitation. I am a soldier, but I am also a human being, and sometimes being human requires choices that challenge what it means to be a soldier. That's not weakness, that's the highest form of strength. Subscribe to HC Stories if you believe silence sometimes speaks louder than victory.